Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and I'm talking about the results of the St. Louis Democratic primary race for mayor. They just had their vote, and I'd spoken earlier about this race in terms of Black Girl Magic, the fact that there were some women running for offices as a direct result of the Black Lives Matter movement. Tishaura Jones, who was on the ballot as the Democratic contender, one of many going through the primary. She actually lost the primary by decimal points, maybe 2.6 decimal points, about 888 votes. So she had a really good run. She had a really good campaign platform. People believed in her. However, she had to split the black vote with about three other African Americans who were also running in the Democratic primaries with her. And so the black vote was split amongst them. She got about 30%, and then the next person got maybe 10 or something like that, and so on and so forth. And so by splitting that vote, the Caucasian Democratic challenger, the moderate centrist Democrat who was endorsed by the police union, actually won the Democratic primary for mayor in St. Louis. And this is a cause of concern because the issue of policing in the St. Louis area has been a really hot topic that's caused a lot of stress and tension as a direct result of the Ferguson riots. It's actually become a life or death situation for the residents to really pay attention to outcomes. And despite this, less than one third of eligible voters voted in the Democratic primary, or for that section of the election. And so there's a concern about, I guess, voter motivation, voter concern, um, also outreach issues, maybe voter education. And so, some things that could have gone right went wrong. And so Tishaura Jones did not win, but she may still win. This is how she might be able to do it. She nearly won. Not quite a virtual tie, but close. And the fact that the vote was split between her and three other aldermen who are African American males means that she still got a substantial level of support. She's part of the city machine. She's a treasurer, and so she's known. She's very much outspoken, and people believed in her, and they still do, I'm pretty sure. And so the question becomes, after the morning, the results of the Democratic primary, where do we go from here? And I've been looking around at articles, and I found one at the Root. And what disturbed me was that I didn't really see any consideration given to the possibility of Tishaura Jones throwing her support either to her Democratic challenger or victor, the centrist Democrat in the race with her, who was endorsed by the police union. That it's possible that Tishaura Jones will be a kingmaker or a queenmaker, deciding on where she should direct her support. She was like the progressive alternative in the Democratic primary. And again, some people are really confused, saying that, well, if you talk about race, then you're not progressive, which is nonsense. And so if you are African American and you're living in a city under siege by overzealous policing, it does become a life or death situation based on your identity. And if you're of a identity that is targeted, then you will speak on that issue and you will be progressive if you have that political leaning. And so Tishaura Jones was a progressive in that race. She was pro people. She wanted to have community oversight over the police. she wanted to move the city forward economically as well. And so on many issues. Um, but she was basically the Bernie Sanders in that race. If Bernie were a black woman named Tishaura, and he lived in St. Louis, maybe. And that her Democratic challenger was the Hillary Clinton. And then we also have a Jill Stein in the race. There is a Green candidate for mayor who is still in the race and who will be on the ballot for the April 4th general election for mayor in St. Louis. This is Jonathan MacFarland. And I noted that because I've spoken of him on this channel when I was talking about down ballot races. And, the fact that he's a Green. And so, of course, his views line up pretty clearly with Tishaura Jones. And I'm going to go through Jonathan MacFarland's platform, of course, from a Green point of view. And then also the fact that the articles I saw, at the root didn't really mention that there was still a progressive alternative to consider in the race. And that disturbed me greatly. And I don't know if it's about voter education, a lack of media access, or what the barrier is. I mean, he is on the ballot. He has been campaigning, I hope. It seems like he has been. And then participating in media events. And so I'm going to go through his Jonathan MacFarland's background very quickly and see what people think. Okay, so he is a lifelong resident of St. Louis, and he grew up there, and he's a part of the community. He's volunteered. He's worked there. He's been part of organizations such as North St. Louis Arts Council, Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment, Jobs with Justice, Service Employees International Union, Better Family Life, the Gateway Green Alliance, etc. He's also been involved with education issues, and he's worked with Coalition Against Police Crimes and Repression to support the passage of the Civilian Oversight Board. He also ran for St. Louis's 6th Ward Alderman. He received 17% of the vote in that race. And then he also ran for U.S. Senate last November, and he received over 30,000 votes. And so he wants to restore the St. Louis North Riverfront, create higher paying jobs, and make the city more attractive to tourists. And that he currently serves as the Green Party committeeman for the 9th Ward and as the Missouri Green Party St. Louis City Representative. And so that's a quick overview of his involvement in the community. His platform is divided into 5 sections: building a strong economy. He wants to bring renewable energy, manufacturing, and design jobs to St. Louis. And then ensure St. Louis has family entertainment venues, affordable housing, and public schools to attract new residents. And then also, provide adequate compensation to St. Louis workers. In terms of education, he supports strengthening the public school system, and that he wants St. Louis public schools to once again be accredited. He wants to adopt something similar to the Kalamazoo program, Kalamazoo Promise. He saw that on a trip to Kalamazoo, Michigan, whereby the public universities of the state provide free tuition for students who graduate from the Kalamazoo public schools. He wants something similar in St. Louis. And also limit the busing program and return control to the elected school board, and to dedicate funding and resources back into the city schools. Okay, in terms of crime and policing, he says it's best to address the cause and not the symptom, and that he feels that police should be required to wear body cameras that cannot be turned off for their safety and the safety of city residents, and that there should be emphasis on de-escalation training and some substance abuse intervention training, also mental health, um, recognition of mental illness and cognitive disorders, and then implicit bias training as well. All sorts of training, and then community type policing, responsible gun legislation, things like that. And so, also, he wants to focus on the environment. Being a green, that's no surprise, and that the fact that he recognizes that St. Louis has a high occurrence of asthma that's due to poor air quality, and the fact that the soil is heavily contaminated with lead and other toxins. And so he says that it's necessary to protect the water too as well, and that he wants to embrace the future by leading the movement towards renewable energy. And so, on the last point, he focuses on race relations. Again, if you're part of an identity that is targeted for violence and repression based on race, you do have to speak up about it and recognize it and ensure that it's addressed. Pretending that you don't see it, pretending that it's all economic, that doesn't make the problem go away. It just makes you feel better. And then also, he wants to state here that it's impossible to have a conversation about moving St. Louis forward without also discussing the need for improved race relations, that the city is highly segregated in businesses, schools, and entertainment venues, and that it's at a disadvantage to the residents of the city, and that there is a type of prejudice from certain organizations that use demeaning tactics to discourage African Americans from patronizing their establishments. And so these are the things that Jonathan MacFarland wants to address. What I'm wondering is if Jonathan MacFarland feels up to getting in touch with Tishaura Jones and seeing how she feels about his platform, and if it's something that she agrees with and can get behind, and whether her supporters feel the same, the people that nearly caused her win in the Democratic primary, or whether Tishaura Jones will toe the Democratic Party line, as many people have done, and get behind a candidate who was the pick of the police union, and who is a moderate, who is a centrist, and has indicated that she wishes to maintain the status quo of the city. So you do have a progressive in the race, and then you have a centrist moderate in the race. And it might be Tishaura Jones who, decides where her momentum goes, and what the future fortunes of the city of St. Louis will be. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'll keep watching, and we'll soon find out on April 4th how things turn out in St. Louis. Good luck.